Story 1. The Shadow in the House. The summer I turned 17 was a fleeting moment of freedom, a brief window when the world felt like it was mine to conquer. I was still living in my childhood home, a sprawling suburban house in a quiet neighborhood where every lawn was manicured and every driveway held a gleaming SUV. My parents were the kind of people who treated their home like a museum, every surface polished to a mirror shine, every picture frame hung with geometric precision. They were always there, hovering, fussing over the smallest details. A smudge on the countertop, a cushion out of place. So when they announced they were leaving for a weekend getaway, a rare escape from their self-imposed domestic prison, I could hardly believe it. In all my years, I couldn't recall a single time they'd left me alone for more than a few hours. This was unprecedented, a golden opportunity, and I wasn't about to let it slip through my fingers. I called Riley, my girlfriend at the time, the moment they pulled out of the driveway. Riley was a force of nature, a whirlwind of mischief with a smile that could talk you into anything. Her dark hair always fell in loose waves, and her eyes sparkled with a dangerous kind of excitement, like she was perpetually on the verge of some grand adventure. We'd been dating for 6 months, and while I was the cautious, rule-following kid who never stepped out of line, Riley was the opposite, reckless, bold, and utterly intoxicating. She was the kind of girl who made you feel alive, even if it meant teetering on the edge of trouble. When I told her the house was ours for the weekend, her voice crackled with excitement over the phone. "We're throwing a party," she declared, but I laughed it off. A party was too much, even for me. Instead, I invited her to spend the weekend, just the two of us, in the empty house. It felt like a once-in-a-lifetime chance to have the place to ourselves, free from the watchful eyes of my parents or the nosy neighbors. That Friday night, the air was thick with the scent of summer, cut grass, blooming jasmine, and the faint chlorine tang of the heated pool in the backyard. The house itself was a relic of suburban ambition, all clean lines and oversized windows, with a sprawling living room that opened onto the patio through massive bay windows. The pool glowed like a sapphire under the moonlight, its surface rippling gently in the breeze. Riley arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, her beat-up Honda Civic pulling into the driveway with a familiar rattle. She stepped out wearing a sundress that caught the last rays of light, her grin promising trouble. "This place is insane," she said, spinning in a slow circle to take in the house. "We're going to have so much fun." We spent the evening sprawled on the couch, watching old horror movies and eating pizza straight from the box. The living room was bathed in the warm glow of the lamps, the bay windows reflecting our silhouettes back at us. It felt like we were in a bubble, untouchable by the outside world. Riley, true to form, grew restless as the night wore on. She stood up, stretching dramatically, and wandered to the windows, peering out at the pool. "You know what we should do?" she said, her voice low and teasing. "Skinny dip." I laughed, shaking my head. "No way, the neighbors will see us. Mrs. Carter across the street probably has binoculars trained on us right now." Riley rolled her eyes, stepping closer, her fingers brushing my arm. "Come on, Ethan. When are we ever going to get this chance again? Your parents are gone, the house is ours, and that pool is practically begging for it." Her logic was flimsy, but her enthusiasm was infectious. I hesitated, picturing the headlines in the neighborhood newsletter. "Local teen caught naked in backyard scandal." But Riley's grin was relentless, and before I knew it, I was following her outside, my heart pounding with a mix of nerves and excitement. The night air was cool against our skin as we shed our clothes by the poolside, tossing them onto a lounge chair. The water was warm, enveloping us as we slipped in, the glow of the pool lights casting eerie patterns on our faces. Riley laughed, splashing me, and I retaliated, the water rippling around us in waves of light. For a moment, it was perfect. A stolen moment of freedom, just the two of us under the stars. The house loomed behind us, its bay windows framing the living room like a stage set, the lights inside casting a golden glow that made the interior look like a diorama. It was strangely comforting, like we were still tethered to the safety of the house, even as we floated in our rebellious little world. We swam for what felt like hours, our laughter echoing in the quiet night. Riley was telling some story about her cousin's disastrous prom night, when I glanced toward the house, more out of habit than anything else. That's when I saw it, a shadow on the far wall of the living room, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't just a trick of the light, it moved with purpose, a dark silhouette pacing slowly, deliberately, as if searching for something. My breath caught in my throat, my body freezing in the water. No one was supposed to be here. The house was empty, or so I'd thought. "Riley," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the gentle lapping of the water. "We need to get out. Now!" She caught the urgency in my tone, her playful demeanor vanishing like a switch had been flipped. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyes wide, but I didn't answer. I was already climbing out of the pool, water dripping onto the stone patio as I grabbed a towel. Riley followed, her movements quick and silent. I gestured toward the pool house, a small structure tucked in the corner of the backyard, its windows dark. "Hide in there," I said, my voice low. "Turn off the light and stay quiet until I come back." Riley nodded, her face pale but composed. She slipped into the pool house, the door clicking shut behind her, and I heard the faint snap of the light switch. I stood there for a moment, dripping wet, the towel wrapped around my waist, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The shadow in the house demanded my attention, and despite the fear clawing at my chest, I knew I had to face it. My parents had raised me to handle things, to be the responsible one, and that instinct kicked in now, overriding my better judgment. I crept to the back door, my bare feet cold against the tile as I eased it open. The kitchen was dark, the only light spilling from the living room, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. I grabbed a chef's knife from the block on the counter, its weight grounding me as I moved forward. The house felt different now, its familiar corners warped by an unnatural stillness. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of my mother's lavender candles, but it did nothing to calm me. I scanned the living room, expecting to see someone lurking, a figure in the shadows, a face pressed against the glass, but it was empty. The shadow was gone, but the feeling of being watched clung to me like damp clothing. I moved deeper into the house, the knife trembling slightly in my grip. That's when I noticed the signs, small, insidious details that made my skin crawl. A dining room chair was pulled out, its legs misaligned with the others, as if someone had sat there and left in a hurry. A picture frame on the wall tilted slightly, the family photo inside, a stiff portrait of me and my parents, now askew. A coffee mug sat on the kitchen counter, one I hadn't touched, its handle turned outward like an invitation. These weren't the hallmarks of a typical burglar. A thief would grab electronics, jewelry, cash, and bolt. This felt personal, like someone was toying with me, leaving breadcrumbs of their presence to taunt me. My pulse hammered in my ears as I checked every room on the ground floor. The front door was locked, the deadbolt firmly in place. The windows were shut tight, their latches secure. I moved upstairs, the knife raised, every creak of the floorboards amplifying my dread. The hallway was dark, the air thick with that damn lavender scent. I checked my parents' bedroom, their neatly made bed untouched, the closet doors closed. My room was the same, my desk cluttered with textbooks and empty soda cans, exactly as I'd left it. The guest room was empty, the air stale from disuse. The house was silent, but the silence felt alive, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake. I stood at the top of the stairs, my mind racing. Had I imagined the shadow? No, it was too distinct, too human in its movements. I replayed the moment in my head, the silhouette pacing, its edges sharp against the lit wall. Someone had been here, and they'd vanished without a trace. Frustration and fear collided, and I decided to call the police. I dialed 911, my voice shaking as I explained what I'd seen. The operator was calm, professional, promising a patrol car would be there in minutes. I went back to the pool house to get Riley, who was still crouched in the dark, her eyes wide with worry. "What's happening?" she whispered. "I saw someone," I said, keeping my voice low. "A shadow in the house, the police are coming." She nodded, wrapping her towel tighter around her shoulders. We waited by the pool, the the night air chilling our damp skin until the flash of red and blue lights lit up the driveway. Two officers, a gruff man with a mustache and a younger woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, searched the house and yard with flashlights, their radios crackling. They found nothing. No footprints in the grass, no fingerprints on the doors, no signs of forced entry. The man, Officer Daniels, suggested I might have scared the intruder off when I entered the house. "Happens sometimes," he said, his tone dismissive. "They see lights, hear noise, and bolt." But his words felt hollow. If someone had been here, how had they slipped away so completely? The windows were locked, the doors secure. It didn't make sense. The officers left, advising us to keep the doors locked and call if anything else happened. Riley and I were too shaken to stay in the house alone, but we didn't have anywhere else to go. We retreated to my bedroom, pushing my dresser against the door in a futile attempt at security. Sleep was impossible, our nerves frayed by every sound. The hum of the air conditioner, the distant chirp of crickets, the creak of the house settling. Around 4 a.m., I jolted awake to a sound that made my blood run cold. The unmistakable creak of floorboards above us. The attic. Someone was up there, moving with deliberate, measured steps, like they were pacing, searching. I held my breath, straining to listen as the creaks grew louder, closer, now descending the staircase. Each step was slow, deliberate, as if the intruder was trying not to be heard. Riley's hand gripped mine, her nails digging into my skin, her breathing shallow. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What do we do?" I grabbed the knife from the nightstand, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "Stay here," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Don't move." She nodded, her eyes wide with fear, and I slipped into the hallway, the knife raised. The creak stopped, replaced by a chilling silence that felt heavier than the noise. I moved toward the front door, my bare feet silent on the carpet, expecting to see a figure lurking in the shadows. Then with a soft click, the front door swung open, revealing the empty night beyond. A gust of cool air rushed in, carrying the scent of jasmine, and I stood frozen, the knife trembling in my hand. Whoever had been inside was gone. I checked the door, my hands shaking as I locked it again. The deadbolt was intact, the chain undisturbed. How had they gotten in? How had they gotten out? I went back to Riley, who was still curled up on the bed, her face pale. "They're gone," I said, but the words felt empty. We didn't sleep the rest of the night, sitting up with the lights on, jumping at every sound. The next morning, the full weight of the intrusion hit me like a freight train. I went to the kitchen to make coffee, hoping to ground myself in routine, when I noticed the knife block. It was empty. Not just the chef's knife I'd grabbed the night before, every single knife was gone. The block sat on the counter, its slots glaringly empty, a silent accusation. I checked the drawers, the dishwasher, even the sink, but they were nowhere to be found. My stomach churned as I realized this wasn't a simple theft. Someone had taken every blade in the house, a deliberate act that felt like a message, though I couldn't decipher what it meant. I searched the rest of the house, my unease growing with every discovery. A few dollar bills were missing from my wallet on the hall table. A cheap digital watch I'd left on my dresser was gone. A portable Bluetooth speaker from the living room had vanished. These were small, insignificant items, the kind of things a thief might grab in a hurry. But the knives were different. No rational burglar would prioritize kitchen knives over electronics or jewelry. This was personal, a violation that went beyond theft, designed to unsettle us. When my parents returned that afternoon, I told them everything. The shadow, the creaks, the missing knives. I expected them to be furious, to lecture me about responsibility, but they were strangely calm. My mom nodded, her face unreadable, and said they'd replace the knives and install a security system. My dad clapped me on the shoulder, muttering something about kids these days and how I'd handled it well. Their reaction was too composed, too practiced, as if they'd expected something like this. It made my skin crawl, but I didn't press them. I was too exhausted, too rattled. Riley left that evening, her usual spark dimmed by the ordeal. We didn't talk about it much after that, and our relationship fizzled out a few months later, the memory of that night a silent wedge between us. I never forgot the shadow, the creaks, the empty knife block. I still check the locks every night, my eyes scanning the corners of the house for movement. I've tried to rationalize it, a prank, a thief with a strange fetish, a neighbor playing a cruel joke, but none of it fits. Whoever was in the house that night wasn't just passing through. They were watching, waiting, leaving their mark in ways I'll never fully understand. And somewhere out there, they're still holding those knives. Story 2, The Masked Intruders. Spring at Rowan University was a time of rebirth, when the campus shook off the gray sludge of winter and burst into color. Holly Bash was the pinnacle of it all, a festival that turned our quiet suburban enclave into a riot of sound and light. Picture carnival rides spinning under strings of fairy lights, food trucks slinging tacos and funnel cakes, and a surprise headliner rocking Hollybush Green, a sprawling lawn near the historic Hollybush Mansion. It was our own little Coachella, a day when every student let loose, the air thick with laughter, cheap beer, and the thump of bass. As a sophomore still carving out my place in the world, I lived for Holly Bash. It was a chance to feel alive, to drown out the monotony of lectures and dorm life with a night of reckless abandon. That April evening in 2024, I was riding high on the festival's energy. I'd spent the day bouncing between friends, playing lawn games, and dancing to a local band that wasn't half bad. By midnight, the official events had wound down, but the real party was just getting started. Groups of students spilled into dorms and off-campus houses, the night alive with the buzz of youth. I ended up at my friend Jake's dorm in Willow Hall, a concrete slab of a building that smelled faintly of microwave popcorn and weed. We played cards, passed around a bottle of cheap vodka, and laughed until my sides hurt. It was the kind of night that made you feel invincible, like nothing could touch you. Around 2:30 a.m., I decided to head back to my dorm, Chestnut Hall, about a 10-minute walk across campus. Glassboro was a sleepy suburb, the kind of place where the biggest crime was someone stealing a bike from the rack. The streets were lined with quaint houses, their porch lights casting soft glows on the sidewalks, and I didn't think twice about walking alone. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of blooming dogwoods, and the campus was quiet, the festival's chaos fading into a distant hum. I pulled my hoodie up, my sneakers scuffing the pavement, and let my mind wander, replaying the night's highlights. Chestnut Hall loomed ahead, a boxy 4-story building with glass doors that always stuck. I swiped my ID, the lock buzzing as I pushed inside. The lobby was dimly lit, the fluorescent lights flickering slightly, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. The hum of the vending machine was the only sound, a low drone that felt oddly oppressive in the silence. I headed toward the stairs, my footsteps echoing, when something caught my eye. In the lounge, a small room off the lobby with mismatched couches and a scratched coffee table, someone was sitting. Not just sitting, but still, unnaturally so, like a statue carved from the shadows. They wore dark clothes and a black ski mask, not a COVID mask, but a full-on horror movie ski mask, the kind that screamed danger. My heart lurched, my feet freezing to the floor. People stayed up late in dorms, sure, but this was different. He wasn't studying, wasn't scrolling on his phone. He was just there, his head slightly tilted, as if he'd been waiting for me. My mind flashed to earlier that night, when whispers had spread about a group of masked people, 10, maybe more, riding bikes around campus, banging on dorm doors, causing chaos. Social media was buzzing with blurry photos and panicked posts. Guys in masks outside Evergreen, WTF? Someone just tried to get into Mimosa Hall. I'd brushed it off as drunk kids pulling pranks, a Holly Bash tradition gone too far. But now staring at this figure, the air thick with menace, I wasn't so sure. He moved suddenly, leaping off the couch with a speed that made my stomach drop. His boots hit the floor with a thud, and he turned toward me, his masked face unreadable. I didn't think. I ran, my sneakers pounding the hallway as I dove into the nearest bathroom, slamming the door behind me and twisting the lock. My breath came in ragged gasps, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of insects. I pressed my ear to the door, listening for footsteps, But the hallway was silent. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Jake. "You make it back okay?" People are saying those masked guys are still out there. I didn't respond. My hands were shaking too badly to type, my mind replaying the image of that figure, his stillness more terrifying than any movement. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the drip of a faucet and the hum of the lights. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank, some frat guy trying to scare people. But the mask, the way he'd moved, felt too deliberate, too predatory. I cracked the door open, peering into the empty hallway. The lounge was out of sight, but I could feel his presence, like a shadow lingering just beyond my vision. I stepped out, my pepper spray clutched in my hand, the keychain dangling from my fingers. I'd bought it freshman year at my mom's insistence, never thinking I'd need it. Now it felt like my only lifeline. I made for the other exit, the one near the back of the building, my heart pounding in my ears. As I passed the lounge, I saw him again, still masked, now standing by the door. His bike was propped against the wall, a sleek black thing with a chain that glinted under the lights. A chair was wedged under the door handle, as if he'd tried to block it, to trap someone inside, or keep someone out. My blood ran cold. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me, his eyes hidden behind the mask's dark holes. I held up the pepper spray, not aiming but making it clear I had it, my hand trembling. "Stay back," I said, my voice cracking, but he didn't respond. It was like he wanted me to feel the fear, to know he could act, but chose not to. I kept moving, my eyes locked on him until I reached the exit. I pushed through the glass door, stumbling into the night, the cool air a shock against my flushed skin. The campus was eerily quiet now, the festival's energy long gone, replaced by a stillness that felt alive with threat. I was halfway to Magnolia Hall, another dorm across the quad, when I heard the whir of bike tires behind me. My heart stopped. I turned to see 3 more masked figures riding up, their bikes weaving in tight circles around me like vultures. They didn't touch me, but their laughter was sharp, mocking, their voices muffled by the masks as they taunted me with words I couldn't catch. "Hey, where you going?" one called, his voice distorted. "Party's just starting." One of them waved what looked like a gun, its metallic glint catching the streetlight. It could have been fake, an airsoft toy, but in that moment, it felt real, its weight as heavy as the fear in my chest. My legs trembled, but I kept walking, my eyes fixed on Magnolia's lights, a beacon in the dark. The bikers stayed close, their tires humming, their laughter drilling into my skull. I fumbled for my phone, texting Jake, "Meet me outside Magnolia. Now, please." He was there in minutes, his lanky frame appearing under the dorm's entrance light, his face etched with concern. "Dude, what's going on?" he asked as I practically collided with him. The bikers were gone, vanished into the night like they'd never existed. I told him everything, my voice shaking, the masked figure in the lounge, the bikes, the gun. Jake's eyes widened, but he stayed calm, walking me back to Chestnut Hall. The campus was silent now, the streets empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Back in my dorm room, I locked the door, checked the windows, and sat on my bed, the pepper spray still in my hand. Sleep was impossible, my mind racing with questions. Who were they? Why me? Was it a prank or something worse? The next morning, I called my mom, spilling the whole story in a rush. She was furious, demanding to know why I hadn't called the police immediately. She reported it to campus security, who confirmed others had seen the masked group. My friend Sarah texted me later, saying she'd been cornered by 2 masked guys near the library, one flashing what looked like a handgun. Another friend, Mike, said a group had banged on his dorm door, laughing as they rode away. No one was hurt, but the campus was on edge, the festival's joy replaced by a creeping unease. Social media exploded with theories. Local kids, a gang initiation, even a cult. The gun detail gnawed at me. If it was just a prank, why the weapons? Why the masks? Campus police stepped up patrols, but they found nothing. No bikes, no masks, no evidence. The official statement called it disruptive behavior by unknown individuals. possibly non-students taking advantage of the festival's chaos. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than that. The figure in the lounge had been waiting, his stillness deliberate, like he'd known I was coming. The bikers had targeted me, their taunts too personal, too focused. I started avoiding late-night walks, sticking to well-lit paths and traveling with friends. The memory of that ski mask, those unseen eyes, lingers like a shadow I can't outrun. Whoever they were, they turned Holly Bash into a nightmare, and I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Story 3. The Uninvited Guest. 2 summers ago, I was still tangled up with Amanda, a girl who was equal parts magnetic and maddening. We'd been dating for just over a year, a roller coaster of highs and lows fueled by her reckless charm and my stubborn determination to keep up. Amanda was a study in contradictions, sharp-witted but careless, fiercely independent yet craving attention. She was working as a camp counselor at a summer program in the city, a job that seemed beneath her ambitions. She had big dreams: law school, a corner office, a life of power suits and high stakes. But for reasons I never fully grasped, she loved wrangling kids at a community center, 25 minutes from her suburban palace. The job paid peanuts, but her eyes lit up when she talked about it, and I learned early on not to question her choices. Amanda didn't take kindly to being challenged. Her family lived in a wealthy enclave, all gated communities and pristine lawns, where every house looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Theirs was a 3-story monstrosity with high ceilings, gleaming hardwood floors, and a backyard that could host a wedding. The place screamed money, from the marble countertops to the chandelier that looked like it cost more than my car. Amanda's parents were rarely home, always jetting off to some conference or vacation, leaving her to rattle around in that cavernous house. Their absence was a running theme, and it shaped her in ways I didn't fully understand until later. She'd throw parties whenever they were gone, turning the house into a playground for her friends and their friends, a chaotic swirl of music and laughter that felt like a rebellion against the emptiness of her home life. That summer, the camp counselors decided to throw an end-of-summer bash, and Amanda's house was the obvious choice. It wasn't her first rodeo. She'd hosted these parties before, though I'd never been around for one. We'd only started dating the previous fall, so this was my initiation into her world of excess. The night of the party, I pulled into the driveway just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the house in a warm golden glow. Cars lined the street, music thumped from inside, and the air buzzed with anticipation. I stepped through the front door into a sea of bodies, counselors, their friends, random +1s, laughing, drinking, spilling onto the lawn with red Solo cups in hand. The vibe was electric, a perfect snapshot of summer's end, but I couldn't shake a nagging unease. Amanda was in her element, flitting from group to group, her laugh cutting through the noise like a siren. I tried to blend in, grabbing a beer and chatting with a few counselors I vaguely knew from Amanda's stories, but my eyes kept drifting to her and to the guy who seemed glued to her side. His name was Derek, a loud, cocky counselor with a frat boy swagger and a smile that screamed trouble. He was all broad shoulders and fake charm, leaning too close to Amanda, his hand brushing her arm as he laughed at something she said. It wasn't just small talk, it was blatant flirting, the kind that made my stomach twist. Amanda didn't pull away, her smile wide and inviting, and I felt a familiar sting of jealousy. We'd had this fight before, her habit of soaking up attention from other guys, my struggle to keep my insecurities in check. I trusted her mostly, but moments like this tested me. Instead of confronting Derek, which would have ended in a shouting match and Amanda's inevitable defensiveness, I hatched a different plan. I'd play nice, get him drunk, and let him crash and burn on his own. It was petty, sure, but it felt safer than starting a scene. I sidled up to him, all smiles, and offered him a fresh beer. "Having a good time, man?" I asked, handing him a cold one. He grinned, oblivious, and we fell into an easy conversation about nothing. Sports, music, the usual. I kept his cup full, refilling it every time it got low, my Irish-Mexican blood giving me an unfair advantage in the drinking department. My tolerance was absurdly high, a genetic quirk I'd inherited from my dad's side, and I knew Derek didn't stand a chance. By midnight, my plan was working better than I'd expected. Derek was slurring his words, swaying slightly as he tried to tell a story about a canoeing mishap at camp. His eyes were glassy, his gestures sloppy, and before long he stumbled to the basement, collapsing onto a couch with a groan. He was out cold, drooling into a throw pillow, and I couldn't help but feel a smug satisfaction. Amanda, however, wasn't fooled. She cornered me in the kitchen, her arms crossed, her eyes flashing with annoyance. "You did that on purpose," she said, her voice low but sharp. "Did what?" I asked, playing dumb, but my grin gave me away. "Don't bullshit me, Ryan," she snapped. "You got him drunk because you were jealous." I shrugged, leaning against the counter. Maybe he just can't handle his liquor. We argued, our voices hushed but heated, the kind of fight we'd had a dozen times before. It wasn't serious, just another ripple in our stormy relationship, but it left a sour taste in my mouth. The party raged on around us, growing louder and messier, the house filling with the chaos of too many people and too much alcohol. I needed a break, a moment to clear my head, so I slipped outside to the driveway. The cool night air was a relief, a stark contrast to the stifling heat inside. I leaned against Amanda's car, a sleek black Audi her parents had bought her, and stared up at the stars, their light faint against the suburban glow. That's when I noticed him, a figure standing at the far edge of the property, half hidden in the shadows of a street lamp. He was tall, motionless, his face obscured by the darkness. At first I thought he was a neighbor, annoyed by the noise, but something about his stillness felt wrong, like a predator sizing up its prey. My heart kicked up a notch, the beer in my hand suddenly feeling heavy. Liquid courage, or maybe just stupidity, pushed me to approach. I crossed the lawn, my sneakers sinking into the grass, and called out, "Hey, can I help you?" I tried to sound friendly, but my voice carried an edge, a warning. He didn't answer right away. He took a slow step forward, just enough to catch the edge of the street lamp's glow. I couldn't make out his face, but his presence was heavy, oppressive. "Are Amanda's parents home?" he asked, his voice low and deliberate, like he was reading from a script. My stomach dropped. He knew her parents' names, her actual parents, not some vague reference. This wasn't a random neighbor. I forced a casual tone, my heart pounding. "Yeah, they're inside. Big party, you know?" It was a lie, but I hoped it would scare him off. He didn't respond, just nodded, a slow, deliberate movement that made my skin crawl. "Okay," he said and turned, walking not toward a car or another house, but straight down the street, his figure swallowed by the darkness. I watched him until he was gone, my pulse racing, my mind screaming that something was very wrong. I went back inside, the party's noise hitting me like a wall. I tried to shake it off, joining a ping pong game in the basement to distract myself. The basement was quieter, the crowd thinner, most people gathered upstairs around Amanda's pool table. I was mid-serve, the ping pong ball bouncing across the table, when the doorbell rang. My heart skipped. Amanda had told everyone to use the back door. No one should be at the front. The sound cut through the noise, sharp and insistent, and I felt a tug in my gut, a warning I couldn't ignore. I excused myself, ignoring my opponent's protests, and headed upstairs. As I passed Amanda's room, I saw her sprawled on her bed, passed out, her hair fanned across the pillow. She was oblivious to the chaos, her chest rising and falling in the soft glow of her bedside lamp. I turned off the light and closed the door, not wanting to wake her. She'd been drinking, and I knew she'd be out for hours. At the front door, I found Bella, a counselor I barely knew, swaying drunkenly in the foyer. She was giggling, her words slurred, and I had to repeat myself twice to get her attention. "Who rang the doorbell?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She blinked at me, her eyes unfocused. "Some old guy," she mumbled. "Said he was a family friend. Wanted to return something he borrowed." My blood ran cold. "You let him in?" I snapped. She shrugged, stumbling off toward the kitchen, muttering something about finding another drink. I bolted upstairs to Amanda's parents' room, my worst fears clawing at me. The door was ajar, and when I pushed it open, my heart sank. Drawers were yanked out, their contents spilled across the floor. Jewelry boxes sat empty, their velvet interiors gleaming mockingly. The closet looked like a tornado had hit it, clothes pulled from hangers, shoes scattered. The guy had robbed them, and Bella's drunken stupidity had let him walk right in. I was about to head downstairs, my mind racing with what to do next, when I caught a flicker in the mirror on the back of the door. A shadow moving behind me, quick and deliberate. My breath caught, but before I could turn, he was on me. He tackled me from behind, his weight slamming me to the floor, the air rushing from my lungs. His hands clawed at my shirt, tearing the fabric as I struggled beneath him. His breath was hot and ragged, his grip relentless, like he was trying to pin me down, to mark me. Panic surged and I thrashed, my arms flailing until I managed to shove him off, my strength fueled by raw fear. He scrambled to his feet, a blur of dark clothing and wild eyes, and sprinted across the room. Before I could react, he dove out an open window, landing on the roof with a sickening thud. I stumbled to the window, my chest heaving, and caught a glimpse of him dropping into the side yard, his figure disappearing into the shadows. I didn't chase him. My legs were shaking too badly, my mind reeling from the violence of the encounter. I stood there, clutching the windowsill, trying to process what had just happened. The room was a wreck, the air heavy with the scent of cologne. His cologne, sharp and unfamiliar, lingering like a ghost. I didn't want to stay in the house any longer. The party was out of control, the guests too drunk to care about the chaos. I couldn't be the one to kick everyone out, not after that. So I called the police. They arrived quickly, local officers who knew Amanda's family and didn't make a fuss. They cleared the house with minimal drama, herding the stragglers out into the night. I went to the basement, found Derek still passed out, and shook him awake. "Get an Uber," I said, my voice flat. He groaned, vomited into a trash can, and fumbled for his phone. I didn't care. I just wanted him gone. The next morning, Amanda woke up hungover and furious when I told her what had happened. She called her parents, who were predictably livid, but their anger seemed performative, like they were more annoyed at the inconvenience than the loss. They didn't bother reporting it to the police. No cameras, no evidence, no point. Amanda shrugged it off, her rebellion flaring as she dismissed their reaction. "They'll get over it," she said, but I could see the cracks in her bravado. That night had revealed something about her carelessness, her indifference to consequences, that I couldn't ignore. It was a red flag, one of many I'd overlooked in our time together. I couldn't stop thinking about the guy, how he knew her parents' names, how he'd watched the house, waiting for the perfect moment. Part of me wondered if he was connected to them, someone from their past who knew their habits, their absences. The cologne, the way he'd tackled me, felt personal, like he'd wanted me to know he was there. Looking back, that night was a turning point, a moment when I saw Amanda for who she was, a girl running from her own emptiness, dragging everyone else along for the ride. We broke up a few months later, and I haven't been back to that house since. But the memory of that figure, his voice, his attack, still haunts me. Whoever he wasn't just a thief, he was a predator, and I'd walked right into his trap.